If you grew up with a parent who hurt you, you have probably been told to forgive them. Maybe gently, maybe not. People you trust have said it, that you should let it go, that holding on is only hurting you, that you will never be free until you forgive. And maybe you have tried. You have sat with it, talked yourself toward it, gotten close, and some quiet part of you still could not get there. So you decided the problem was you, that you were stuck or too bitter or too weak to do the one thing everyone agrees you are supposed to do. And the harder you tried and could not manage it, the more certain you became that the fault was somewhere inside you. I want to offer you a different possibility. What if forgiveness was never the first thing? What if it was never even the goal? For a long time, we have treated forgiveness as the finish line of healing, the door you have to walk through before you are allowed to feel better. But that order is wrong. And carrying it has kept good, thoughtful people stuck for years, convinced they had failed at healing when they were actually doing it right. This is not a video about whether you should forgive. It is about what comes first and why the thing you have been told to do last might be the very thing standing between you and peace. Think about how often the word forgiveness arrives uninvited. It comes from family, who would rather the past stay quiet. It comes from friends who love you but are uncomfortable watching you hurt. It comes from faith, where forgiveness is sometimes held up as proof of your goodness. It comes from every well-meaning article that promises forgiveness will set you free. None of these people are cruel. Most of them genuinely want you to feel better. But notice what all of that pressure actually asks of you. It asks you to be the one who closes the subject. To be the bigger person again, to do the emotional work of resolving something you did not cause. And if you are honest, you are tired. Not dramatic, not bitter, just tired. Tired of being the one who is supposed to understand. Tired of explaining yourself, or of no longer bothering to. Tired of the small ache that shows up at holidays, at birthdays, on certain phone calls. You have spent a great deal of your life managing this quietly, and now the same voices that never quite saw how hard it was are telling you the solution is simple: just forgive. And here is the quiet part. After enough years of hearing it, the pressure stops needing anyone else to say it out loud. It moves inside. You become your own enforcer. You catch yourself feeling the old hurt and immediately scold yourself for still feeling it after all this time. You tell yourself you should be over this by now. You measure yourself against some imaginary, more forgiving person you were supposed to have become, and you always come up short. The people who first laid the weight on you may be long gone or long silent, but you have learned to carry it faithfully on their behalf. Here is what almost no one acknowledges. When you are told to forgive before you are ready, the message underneath it is that your pain has become an inconvenience, that it has gone on long enough, that your feelings are a problem to be solved rather than information to be understood. So you push the feelings down to keep the peace, and you call that forgiveness. But it is not forgiveness, it is performance, and performance heals nothing. It only adds the exhaustion of pretending on top of the original hurt. This is the part I most want you to hear, because it changes everything that follows. The pressure to forgive is not the same as the desire to heal. One comes from outside you, from people who want the discomfort to end. The other comes from inside you, from a part of you that genuinely wants to be free. They can point in completely different directions, and for most of your life, you have probably been answering to the first one while quietly ignoring the second.
Picture an ordinary version of this. A dinner you were not sure you wanted to attend. You go because not going would cause more trouble than going. You are pleasant. You help in the kitchen. You let the old comments pass. And on the drive home, something heavy settles over you that you cannot quite name. Not rage, just a kind of quiet depletion. That feeling is not a sign that you have failed to forgive. It is the cost of forgiving on a schedule that was never yours.
So let us slow down and actually define the word, because most of the pressure around forgiveness comes from never being clear about what it is. Forgiveness, in the way it is usually meant, is an internal release. It is the moment you stop holding a debt against someone, when you set down the wish that the past had been different and stop waiting for them to make it right. That is all it is. And notice everything that definition does not include.
Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Reconciliation means rebuilding the relationship, letting the person back into your life, your time, your trust. You can forgive someone completely and never speak to them again. You can also stay in regular contact with someone you have not forgiven at all. They are separate decisions, and confusing them is where so many people get trapped. They avoid forgiveness because they think it obligates them to reopen a door that is not safe to open. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It does not erase what happened or pretend it did not matter. A clear memory of the truth is not the same as a grudge. You are allowed to remember exactly what happened and still not arrange your whole life around it. Forgiveness is not excusing. It does not mean deciding that what hurt you was acceptable or that the person's reasons cancel out the impact on you. Understanding why someone did something and excusing what they did are two different acts. You can hold both at once. This is why it happened, and it still harmed me. Forgiveness is also not a feeling you can summon on command. This is where so much of the guilt comes from. People imagine forgiveness as a single decision, that you sit down, choose to forgive, and the warm, released feeling is supposed to follow. But you cannot order a feeling to appear. You can decide to stop wishing the person harm. You can decide to stop letting the past run your choices. Those are real and worthwhile decisions. But the feeling people picture cannot be willed into being, and when it does not arrive on schedule, you assume you have failed. You have not. You have only discovered that a feeling is not a lever you can pull, and forgiveness is not something you owe. There is a popular idea that you should forgive for your own sake, that it is really a gift you give yourself. There is a grain of truth in that, but watch how easily it turns into one more obligation. Now, you are not only supposed to forgive for them, you are supposed to forgive for you. And if you cannot, you are failing at your own healing too. Notice how every version of this quietly lands the responsibility back on your shoulders. You did not cause the wound, and yet somehow every road seems to end with you being the one required to repair it. And here is the distinction that matters most of all. Forgiveness is not the same as healing. Healing is the larger thing. It is the slow process of the wound losing its grip on your ordinary life. It is sleeping a little easier, reacting a little less, no longer flinching at a certain tone of voice, building a life that is not secretly organized around an old injury. Forgiveness is at most one possible event inside that process. Healing is the whole landscape. When you separate these two, the pressure changes shape entirely. The question stops being, am I a good enough person to forgive? It becomes something far more useful and far more within your reach. Am I healing? And that is a question you can actually answer with honesty, because you can feel the difference in your own body and in your own days. If forgiveness is not first, then what is? There is an order that healing tends to follow, and almost no one teaches it, which is why so many people believe something is wrong with them when they cannot skip straight to the end. Part of why no one teaches it is that the order is uncomfortable. It does not begin with peace, it begins with the very feelings we were most often told to hide. So we try to leap straight over them to the calm we were promised at the end, and then we wonder why the calm never quite arrives. It usually begins with anger, not the loud kind necessarily. For people raised to be agreeable, anger is often quiet and late, a delayed recognition that something you accepted as normal was not normal at all, that a need you had was real and went unmet. This anger is not a character flaw, it is clarity arriving. It is the part of you that finally takes your own side. People rush past it because anger feels dangerous, or unkind, or unspiritual. But anger that is simply allowed to exist without being aimed at destroying anyone is the first honest step. It tells you that what happened mattered. And notice the difference. Being angry that a child was not protected is not the same as hating the adult who failed to protect them. You can feel the full weight of it without it hardening into contempt. The anger is for the truth of what happened. It does not have to become a weapon against a person. Underneath the anger almost always is grief. And this is the part the world has the least patience for, because the grief is not only for what was done to you, it is for what you never got, the steadiness you needed and did not have. The version of childhood other people seemed to be handed, the parent you kept hoping would finally show up who never quite did, that is a real loss, and it deserves to be mourned like one. If you have carried that loss quietly for most of your life, it is allowed to be sad. It does not make you bitter, it makes you honest. You can let it be sad for a moment, here, without rushing in to fix it or explain it away. Grief that is finally felt is not you going backward, it is you telling the truth. And then, slowly, comes acceptance. Not approval, acceptance. The settled understanding that it happened, that it shaped you, that it cannot be undone, and that your life is still entirely yours to build from here. Acceptance is not a feeling you force. It is what arrives on its own once the anger has been heard and the grief has been felt. It is quieter than people expect. It does not announce itself. You simply notice one ordinary day that the old story has lost some of its weight. Acceptance does not mean you are glad it happened or that you have tied it up in a tidy lesson. It only means you have stopped arguing with reality. The fact of it stops costing you energy every single day because you are no longer bracing against it. Now notice where forgiveness falls in that sequence. It is not step one. It is not even a guaranteed step. It is something that may or may not happen well after acceptance has already done its work. When you try to force forgiveness before the anger and the grief, you are skipping the very process that would have made you well. You are sealing the wound before it is clean. And that is exactly why it never holds. There is a reason this question may be surfacing now. In a way it did not when you were younger. For much of early adulthood, you were building a career, a family, a life. The old wound was there, but it sat in the background, under the work of moving forward. Midlife changes the acoustics. Somewhere in your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, the angle of the light shifts. You begin looking back as much as forward. You start to take stock of what your childhood actually was, of what you carried out of it, of the patterns that quietly followed you into your own relationships and your own parenting. Psychologists call this life review, and it is not morbid. It is one of the most natural and important tasks of the second half of life, making sense of the whole story, not just the chapters you were too busy to read the first time. Often, there is a specific event that opens it. A parent receives a diagnosis, and suddenly the clock is visible on the wall. The other parent dies, and the family you grew up in begins to dissolve in real time. You retire, and the busyness that kept the questions at a distance falls away, leaving a room you did not ask for. You become a grandparent, and watching a small child be cherished stirs something tender and unfinished about how you were held at that age. Any of these can be the moment the old material comes back up. Not because you went looking for it, but because life quietly set it down in front of you. At the same time, the practical ground is moving under you. Your parents, if they are still living, are aging. Roles may be reversing. You may find yourself caring for someone who did not adequately care for you, holding a complicated tenderness and a complicated grief in the very same hand. That tenderness and grief, held in one hand, deserves a name because it is confusing and it is common. You can help a parent and resent them in the same afternoon. You can grieve the parent they once were while caring for the person they have become. None of that is hypocrisy. It is the honest complexity of tending to someone who hurt you, and holding both at once is not a failure of forgiveness. It is maturity. And underneath all of it runs a quieter pressure, a sense that the window for resolution is not infinite, that whatever is going to be understood had better be understood soon. Here is where the culture gets it backwards once again. It hears that closing window and says, hurry up and forgive before it is too late, as if the deadline were about them, about reaching some reconciliation before the chance is gone for good. But the urgency is not about extracting an apology you may never receive, or staging a reunion that may not be safe. The urgency is about your peace, about not carrying this for the rest of your own life, about making sense of it while you still have so much living left to do. And there is nothing weak about looking back at this stage of your life. It is one of the braver things a person can do. You are not wallowing. You are doing the work most people avoid until it is forced upon them.
That is a gentler kind of urgency, and a truer one. It does not ask you to rush toward anyone at all. It asks you to turn finally toward yourself. So let us talk about what peace actually looks like, because it is not always the picture you were handed.
The picture we are sold is reconciliation, the tearful conversation, the apology, the relationship restored, everyone gathered warmly around the table at last. Sometimes that happens, and when it is genuine and safe, it is a real gift. But for a great many people, it is simply not available. The other person is not capable of it, or not willing, or no longer living. And if reconciliation is the only image of peace you allow yourself, then your peace becomes hostage to someone who may never cooperate. You are left waiting on a person who could not meet you then to somehow meet you now. There is another kind of peace, and it does not require them at all. It is the peace of no longer needing the relationship to be different than it is, of seeing the person clearly, their limits, their wounds, the things they were never able to give, and no longer arranging your inner life around the hope that they will finally change. You stop auditioning for their approval. You stop rehearsing the conversation that would at last make them understand. You let them be who they are, at whatever distance keeps you steady, and you take your attention back. This is where boundaries come in, and I want to reframe the word because it has been worn out. A boundary is not a punishment. It is not a wall built out of anger. A boundary is simply the line that lets a relationship exist at whatever level is actually safe. And sometimes it is the only thing that makes any contact possible at all. Limiting how often you visit, deciding which subjects are closed, choosing sometimes a real distance. These are not failures of love. They are often the most loving arrangement available, for them and for you, because they quietly replace resentment with something honest and sustainable. And yes, boundaries can come with guilt, especially if you were raised to believe that a good child is endlessly available. The guilt does not mean you are doing something wrong. Very often it means you are doing something new. A boundary can feel cruel from the inside precisely because you were taught that your needs were negotiable and everyone else's were not. Feeling guilty for protecting yourself is not proof that you have crossed a line. It is a measure of how long you went without one. And what does this peace actually feel like, day to day? It is quieter than triumph. It is a phone that rings and does not flood you with dread. It is a holiday you can attend, or decline, without a week of bracing on either side. It is thinking of the person and feeling something closer to a settled sadness than a fresh wound. It is having your attention back, for your work, your friendships, the people who are genuinely good to you, the life that is in front of you rather than behind. Peace is not a dramatic event. It is the slow return of your own energy to your own life, and it is unilateral, built by one person, you, and it cannot be vetoed by anyone else. Peace, then, is not the relationship you wish you had. It is the freedom to stop fighting for it. And that freedom is available to you whether or not the other person ever changes a single thing. Which brings us, finally, back to forgiveness and to what becomes of it once you stop chasing it. Here is what tends to happen. When you let yourself be angry and let yourself grieve and slowly arrive at acceptance and build a life with boundaries that keep you steady, something softens that you did not force. Not for everyone and not on any schedule, but for a great many people, somewhere down that road, the old debt quietly loses its charge. You think of the person and feel less heat than you used to, not because you decided to, because you healed, and the healed version of you simply does not need to hold it as tightly anymore. You might notice it in some small, ordinary moment. A memory surfaces that used to tighten your chest, and this time it simply passes through. Their name comes up in conversation, and you are surprised to feel mostly neutral. You realize you have gone weeks without the old argument running on a loop in your head. That is not something you achieved by trying harder to forgive. It is something that happened quietly while you were busy healing.
That is forgiveness as a byproduct. It arrives, if it arrives, as a side effect of becoming well, never as the toll you pay to be allowed to feel better. And that is the only kind of forgiveness that ever truly lasts, because it is real. It was not performed to satisfy anyone. It was not manufactured out of guilt. It grew on its own out of ground you had already healed.
And if that softening never comes, if you do everything well and still feel a clear, cool distance where the warmth was supposed to be, that is allowed too. Some wounds simply do not resolve into forgiveness, and the person is still whole, still healed, still at peace. The goal was never to feel a particular way about the one who hurt you. The goal was to be free. You can be entirely free and still hold a clear-eyed account of what happened. Freedom was always the point, and forgiveness was only ever one of the shapes it might take. So if it comes, let it come. Do not refuse it out of loyalty to your pain, but do not chase it either, and do not let anyone tell you it is the price of admission to your own peace. You do not owe it as a fee. You do not have to produce it on demand to prove that you are a good person. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, is a quiet thing that happens to you on the way to somewhere else, and that somewhere else is healing. That was always the destination. Forgiveness was never the finish line, and it was never the price. So let me leave you with the permission
no one may ever have given you. You do not have to forgive in order to heal. You do not have to reconcile in order to be at peace. You do not have to arrive at some final, tidy resolution by a deadline that belongs to anyone but you. You get to decide what healing looks like in your own life, and you get to take the time it actually requires. You are allowed to be a work in progress. You are allowed to have made real peace with most of it and still have a tender place that aches on certain days. Healing is not a certificate you earn once and hang on the wall. It is a direction you keep gently choosing for the rest of your life. If forgiveness comes someday, quietly, on its own, you can welcome it. And if it never comes, you can still be whole. Those are both honest outcomes. Neither one makes you bitter, and neither one makes you a failure. What makes you well is not whether you forgave, it is whether you told yourself the truth, felt what was real, and built a life that is genuinely your own. The people who love you and even the voices in your own head may keep reaching for that simple word. Let them. You know now that it was never first, and it was never the price. The work was always healing, and healing does not wait for anyone's apology or anyone's permission, including the permission you have been waiting to give yourself. You can begin from exactly where you are, not by forgiving, by being honest, by being gentle with yourself, and by letting that be enough. Whatever you carry out of this, let it be lighter than what you carried in. Not because you forced anything, but because you finally set down a weight that was never yours to hold. The weight of having to forgive before you were allowed to be well. Take care of yourself. I am glad you were here.